Welcome back to Lesson 5. Lesson 5 is drawing with the pen and pencil tools. And the first thing we're going to cover is drawing in Illustrator with the pen tool. And the pen tool is something that is a really powerful tool, but is something that takes a little bit of getting used to. It's not the most intuitive thing. So first we're going to go ahead and open the media file. So I'm going to go to File, Open, and I'm going to go to my Lesson 5 folder. And I'm going to open the file called L5 start _1. And I'm going to go ahead and open it. And you'll see that there are already some templates that are set up that we're going to be recreating. And first, I want to make sure that my smart guides are turned off just so it makes it a little bit easier for me to sort of see what I'm doing. So I'm going to go View, and I'm going to uncheck Smart Guides to make sure that's turned off. And the other thing, when you're drawing with a pen tool, you're just essentially drawing with a stroke, so it's good to make sure that there's no fill. So I'm going to go ahead and go up to the Control Panel, and I'm going to choose None for the fill color. And one last thing, just like every other time, I'm going to go ahead and do a file save as for this file. And again, this is a good thing to get in the habit with. Usually when I start working on something for the day, I'll go ahead and give it a new name so that I have an archive of work going back. And also just, even if you're starting from a fresh file, you want to make sure you save right away. So I'm going to go to File, Save As, and I'm just going to call mine Demo. And I'm going to go ahead and save it to my desktop. And one last thing, I'd already turned my fill off, but I also want to make sure that my stroke is a black stroke. Oh, sorry. In the saving dialog, you just want to go ahead and hit OK. So again, back to the stroke, making sure that I just have black selected, which I do. So I have a black stroke with no fill. And also make sure your stroke is 1 point. So mine was all already set up like that. You may or may not if you've been working already in Illustrator a little bit. But again, no fill, black stroke, a 1 point line. And now we're going to select the pen tool. The pen tool is first column, third tool down. And we're just going to create this design that we see right here. And it's going to be pretty simple. All you have to do is just click on each of the points. So I'm going to click here, I'm going to click on that second point, I'm going to click on the third point, fourth point, fifth point, sixth point, and I'm done. And so I've done a pretty good job of recreating that. And that was pretty easy. The pen tool is great if all you want to do is draw straight lines. I'm going to go ahead and switch to my selection tool, and you'll see when I do that it actually selects this entire drawing. And I can go ahead and move it around just like I would any other shape. The other thing that I want to point out, so I use just the regular selection tool to actually move that drawing around. I can use the direct selection tool to select particular points or line segments and move those around. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this line segment, and I can move it over here. And go ahead and click on this line this point, move it over here. If I want to move an entire line segment, I can grab the line segment and move it wherever I want. And we go ahead and undo that. You can see I can use this regular selection tool, the black arrow, to move the entire object. I can use a direct selection tool to actually move either anchor points or line segments, which is pretty useful. The other thing I can do, I'm going to go ahead and select this anchor point and hit the delete key on my keyboard. And you'll see now these have become two separate objects. And if I want to go ahead and reconnect that, I can't. I can go back to my pen tool. I can arrow over the end of this line until I get the little line next to my pen tool that indicates that I'm about to click on a line segment. And now if I go to this line over here until I get the connecting line icon next to my pen tool, you'll see now I've actually reconnected my line. So, alright, so I'm going to go ahead and save. You can either do a file save, or you can hit Command S on a Mac or Control S on a PC. And now we're going to move on to the next demo file. I'm going to go ahead and close this. And I'm going to do a file open. And now I'm going to open the L5 start to file. And again, just like every time, even though sometimes I forget, I'm going to go ahead and do a file save as. And I'm just going to call this one demo. And save it to my desktop. And I'm going to go ahead and say OK. I'm just going to maximize this window. And again, let's go ahead and zoom in on this. And now I want to actually go ahead and turn my smart guides back on. So I'm going to go to View, and I'm going to turn on Smart Guides. And you'll see that this is a similar line, but a little bit different. These are actually, 90-degree and 45-degree angles in this drawing. And what's useful for that is you can actually use the Shift key in your keyboard to make sure that those are exact. So similar to how you can use the Shift key to constrain the objects that we worked with in a previous lesson, you can also use the Shift key to make sure that when you're drawing with the pen tool that you're actually constrained to 90 degrees or 45 degrees or those sort of main angles instead of all the angles in between. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and start drawing over top of the shape to recreate it. So you'll see that the smart guides are telling me when I'm actually in that point. So I'm going to go ahead and click. I'm going to hold my Shift key down and click again on that second point. Come down here, and the beauty of the Shift key is that you only have to be sort of approximately in the area. So if I come over as far as this way, which is quite a bit away, as long as I'm holding my Shift key down, it'll make sure that I put it in that correct area. And the same, with this one, as long as I'm far enough over, I can be quite a bit off the target, and it will still put it in that area where I want. And again, I mean, you want to be as as precise as you possibly can, but the Shift key gives you some sort of flexibility in knowing that you're getting the angles you want, but you don't have to sort of drive yourself crazy with being so precise. So again, I'm going to click and hold my Shift key to get that angle down here, and it will actually do it on the 45-degree angle that you're seeing here. So I just have to come down here, hold down my Shift key, click there, and then come down to my very last angle. And I have completed this drawing. So I'm going to go ahead and save it. And we're going to go ahead and go on to the next file. So I'm going to close this, and I'm going to open up the next one. So I'm going to go to File, Open, and this time I'm going to open up the lesson file called L5 start _3. And just like all the others, I'm going to go ahead and do a file save as. And I'm going to call this one just demo, which you're probably seeing as a theme. And I'm going to save mine to my desktop. And go ahead and say OK. And then same as I did before, I want to make sure that I select my fill color as being none, and make sure that for my stroke color that it is black, just like we did in the previous file, and make sure again my stroke weight is 1 point. So for me, except for changing the fill, it was exactly what we wanted. Your results may vary. So again, I'm going to select the pen tool if I haven't already. And so now we're going to go ahead and draw our first curve. So I'm going to go ahead and let me zoom in for you on this. So So we're going to go ahead and draw these first curves. For this one, I'm going to go ahead and click on this first anchor point and just drag up. And this will start to make more sense as you work with it, but when you're drawing curves, it's kind of helpful to drag your anchor points in the direction that the curve is going to actually go. So if I go ahead and click that next anchor point and drag it down, you can see I can get a pretty close approximation to that. Now we're going to go down and work on this curve. And so I'm going to do the same thing, but just sort of repeated. You can see when you just have 2 points, it's much easier. When you start connecting a lot of points, things tend to get a bit more complex. So now we're going to we're going to go down to the little more complex curve. And so I'm going to go ahead and do a similar thing, but just a bit more complex. I'm going to go ahead and click on that first anchor point and drag up towards the curve that I'm going to next. I'm going to go click on the next anchor point and then drag to where I'm going to go to next. Click on the next anchor point and drag to where I'm going to go to next. Click on the next anchor point and drag towards where I'm going to go to next. Same thing. And then finally, that last curve. And there you go, you've made your first multiply curve drawing. Alright, so let's move on to our next project. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and go on to our next media file. So I'm going to go to File, Open, and this time I'm going to choose the L5 start _4.ai file. I'm going to go ahead and open. And this time I'm going to do the same thing I did before, make sure that my fill is set to none, verify that my stroke is on black, make sure that I have a 1-point stroke. And also I'm going to go ahead and do a file, save as. And just like you may have guessed, I'm going to call mine L5 start _4 demo, and I'm going to save mine to my desktop. Okay. And then I'm going to go ahead and say OK, and then I'll go ahead and maximize my screen. Let's go ahead and zoom in. Okay, so this first line may look a little difficult, but it just requires some keyboard shortcuts. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this first point. I'm going to hold my Shift key down. I'm going to drag up to just a little bit above that arch, and then let go. Then I'm going to click on the second point, hold my Shift key down on my keyboard, drag down until it's in the right spot. I'm going to let go of my mouse key, and then I'm going to hold down if I'm on a Mac, it's an Option key. If I'm on a PC, it's the Alt key. And you'll see when I do that, that it switches my pen tool to the Convert Anchor Point tool. I'm just going to grab that bottom handle and drag it back up to match the top handle. And then I'm going to let go of my Option or Alt key, and then go ahead, click on that next anchor point, hold down my Shift key, drag down until it's correct, let go of my, or stop clicking on my mouse, hold down my Option key, grab that anchor, bring it back up, and then do the same thing for the rest of these. So click, Shift, drag, release, Option or Alt, pull it up. So again, click, Shift, drag, release, Option or Alt, pull it up. Then finally, click, Shift, drag, and release. And you're done. So now we're going to move on to the second drawing. And this may look a little complex, but It's actually not as complex as what you might think. It's really just the 3 arches, and then we're going to connect them. So we're going to draw those arches the same way as we've been doing. We're going to click, drag up, hold down our shift key, release. Click, hold down our shift key, drag, release. And then we're going to just temporarily switch to our selection tool just so that we deselect that first arch. And then we're going to go ahead and go to the second arch. We're going to click, drag down, release. Click, drag down, holding our shift key, release. And then temporarily we're going to switch, we're going to deselect that, and we're going to move on to that last arch. I'm going to click, drag while holding my shift key, release. Click, shift, drag, release. And then I'm going to deselect. And then all I'm going to do is just connect those line segments. So I'm going to go ahead and mouse over until I get the little indicator that I'm on the end of that point. And then I'm going to do the same until it connects to that point. And then I'm going to deselect. And I'm just going to do the same thing on those last 2 points. I'm going to go and click that point, and then I'm going to click my final point, and I have successfully drawn that shape. Alright, let's move on to our last media file for this lesson. I'm going to go ahead and close this. I'm going to do a file open, and I'm going to choose my L5 start _5.ai file. And just like every time, I'm going to go ahead and do a file save as. And I'm going to call it, as I'm sure you can guess, I'm going to call mine demo and save it to my desktop. And say OK. And then I'm going to maximize this for you. And so, you know, the first thing I'm going to do, which is this thing that we've been doing, is I'm going to make sure that I don't have a fill. I'm going to make sure I have a black stroke. And I'm going to make sure my stroke is 1 point. And so now, you know, we're eventually going to draw this violin, which seems like a very complex shape. I'm sure you're like, yeah, that's never going to happen. But it's actually, you know, like anything else, it's just built up of, you know, smaller pieces. So we're going to do some practice curves, and then we're going to work into this much more complex curve. And so first we're going to go ahead and go to the curve shape step 1. And what we're going to do, and let me zoom in a bit more for you. We're simply going to click on the intersection points, and we're going to drag to that, you know, drag to where it tells us to drag to. So now we're going to go ahead and draw this shape, and we're really just going to drag so that we're going to make sure that our anchor points, or I'm sorry, our handles are where these sort of drawings of the handles are. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this first point and drag up so that my anchor point is where that red dot is. Then I'm going to go ahead and click on my second point and drag down to that red dot. And then go ahead and click on my third anchor point and drag down to my red dot. And you'll see very simply and very easily, I have what looks like a very complex curve. So I'm going to go ahead and save that, and then we're going to move on to the next curve shape. And so the next curve shape is the shape that's right below it. It took me a second to find it, but we came out ahead. And so what we're going to do for this one, it's a little bit more complex, but we'll be able to work our way through it. Alright, so for this one we're going to go ahead and click on the A anchor point, and we're going to drag up to our red point, and then I'm going to hit, if I'm on a Mac, I'm going to hit the Option key. If I'm on a PC, I'm going to hit the Alt key. Then I'm going to drag that other anchor handle down to where that gray dot is. I'm going to go to my next, the D anchor point. I'm going to click that. I'm going to drag out to the red point, and then I'm going to hold down my Option key, and for this one I'm actually going to drag to where that yellow anchor point is, because you're always trying to put your anchor points in the direction of where that next line is going to go. Then I'm going to release. Then I'm going to go up and I'm going to close the structure. I'm going to click the C point, and I'm going to drag out to the anchor points. And you'll see I've successfully drawn what was a much more complex curve. Okay, so now we're going to use all of the tools and practices that we just did to draw that much more complex shape. So let's move over to the violin and go ahead and draw it. So I'm going to make sure that my pen tool is selected, and we're going to go ahead and draw the violin. And actually, I want to also click off my smart guide just because I think it's a little distracting. You know, it's up to you whether you use them or not. So I'm going to go ahead and click my A point, drag out to my red anchor line, and let go. Go to my B point, drag out to my red anchor line, and let go. Go to my C point, drag my red anchor line, let go. Go to my D point, drag to my red anchor line. Go ahead and hold down the Option key on a Mac or the Alt key on a PC, then drag to my yellow line, or to my yellow point. Come down to E, drag to the red point, Option or Alt, yellow. Go to F, drag out to the red point. Go to G, drag to the red point. Hold down the Option or Alt key and go to the yellow point. Go to H, drag out to the red point. Go to I, drag to the red point. Hold down the Alt or Option key and come to the yellow one. Come down to J, drag out to the red point, hold down the Option or Alt key, bring to yellow, and then come down to the A point, close it out, and then drag down to red to make that last bit of a curve, and you're done. You have drawn a very, very complex curve just by learning the tools that you've been working on up till now. Alright, those are the high points of Lesson 5. Please make sure you go through the book and finish up all the rest of the steps. And I will see you in Lesson 6.